approach to a more structured system aimed at encouraging private sector investment into livestock value chain. This is expected to douse the tension generated by the constant clashes between farmers and herders. It is also planning on introducing the integrated cattle log development model in 2019.
Is what we call the ICLD model, which is an integrated cattle log development model, which ensures pasturing is done in a ranch setup, whereby a lot of production happens there, as is done in advanced countries. So what we at NASA we are doing is to prove it that it can work, the economic model also, so that we can ease the pressure of migration when it comes, and also limit and mitigate to a BRS minimum at scale up what we call the skirmishes and the clashes between the farmers who are cultivating land, who are also agribusiness people, and also the herdsmen who are pasturing their livestock, who are also agribusinessmen. So NASA is taking a lead role in that, trying to prove the concept in a way that is economically smart and viable, and that guarantees the impact that we are looking for. Capacity needs to be developed for farmers, also needs to be developed for herdsmen. It's about increasing the capacity of people to see, oh, there's a better model that works, but you need to prove that first. So instead of joining the debate, we are trying, at NASA, we are profiling the solution. So at some point also, we'll also be having roundtable discussions with the herdsmen, with those who are involved in livestock production, and also with the farmers. So at the end of the day, we have a middle ground that works for all. At the end of the day, we are all Nigerians, and what we want is a better society that works and guarantees the future.
On average, 56% of the population in countries affected by conflict live in rural areas where livelihoods largely depend on agriculture. Conflict negatively affects almost every aspect of agriculture and food systems, from production, harvesting, processing and transport to input supply, financing and marketing. In many countries affected by conflict, subsistence agriculture is still central to food security for much of the population.
When you look at the way the number of people who suffer from hunger in the world has developed, we have seen for decades a declining trend. So it was very good. And over the past 3 years, that trend has reversed, and we now see every year more hungry people than the year before. So right now, 821 million people. And the reason for this reversal is twofold. One is conflict, and the other one is climate extremes.
Nigeria's northeast has for decades been dominated by agricultural industry and subsistence farming. In the past 4 years, the insurgency by Boko Haram has exacerbated problems in the region, leaving it further impoverished and facing a severe lack of food. The insecurity has left many farmers unable to plant or harvest their crops. The food security situation visibly worsened in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, Southeastern and Western Asia. This was most notable in situations of conflict, in particular where the food security impact of conflict were compounded by droughts or floods, linked in part to El Nino phenomenon and climate-related shocks.
So we are very careful to link climate change in a very linear way to conflict. It's the same like you are not able to link a particular extreme event to climate change. Climate change is an aggravating factor. We call it a risk multiplier. Especially the Lake Chad region, I think this is an area where you have many different factors intersecting. So there's also a legacy of poor governance. There are certain agricultural policies that have been negative in the past. There's a big man-made dimension to the degradation of natural resources, and on top of that you have conflict and you have climate extremes. So it's I would say a very complex mesh of factors. And when you look at our programs in the Lake Chad region, a lot of it is still emergency related. So there are fires breaking out everywhere, you know, metaphorically. So people are in trouble in one part of the country here and another part of the country there. So we are caught in a pattern of repetitive humanitarian response. And it's very difficult in this context to establish a risk management approach to the crisis, which we would normally need. It's a bit easier to work in countries that do not have conflict. Countries like Malawi, for example, are easier to work with on risk management than, for example, DR Congo. And you know, middle-income countries have also certain capacities that least developed countries do not have. So every country is different.
Analysis by the Africa Risk Capacities suggests that a widespread catastrophic drought in sub-Saharan Africa today could cost upwards of $3 billion in emergency assistance, which will put an unprecedented financial strain on African countries and donor countries' aid budgets.
We thought of thinking about how do we become food secure and use information that is existing in that we can predict what a drought is and the impact. And that's when, together between WFP and African Union, they came up with a project to look at feasibility of looking at a risk pooling mechanism that should support African governments to provide them with immediate predictable funding that can help them respond to impacts of drought and not having to wait until humanitarian aid is mobilized, which is usually late, most often than not, and then it exacerbates the cost of implementing that response.
Problems of acute food insecurity and malnutrition tend to be magnified when natural hazards such as droughts and floods compound the consequence of conflicts. The concurrence of conflict and climate-related natural disasters is likely to increase with climate change, as climate change not only threatens food insecurity and malnutrition, but can also contribute to further downward deterioration into conflict, protracted crisis, and continued fragility.